So I saw this article by CNN talking about Brexit. It's called 8 Frantic Days to Break the Brexit Deadlock. Well, of course, we can already see how CNN is trying to push their agenda against the Brexit and, well, spread their views of saying that Brexit is bad because, of course, who would want a nation to be able to choose for themselves? Well, definitely not a left-wing media. Let's move on. Over the past few days, the Brexit endgame has become a little clearer, and unfortunately for anyone forced to watch it, it looks like it's going to go right down the wire. Well, of course, people voted for Brexit, so that means people want Brexit. Even if it was like 52% who voted in favor of Brexit, that's a majority, and if we are living in a democratic country, it should be respected no matter what. A majority is a majority. On Tuesday night, Prime Minister Theresa May, chief Brexit negotiator Ollie Robbins was caught indulging in a bit of late-night loose talk in a Brussels hotel bar. According to Britain's ETV News, Robbins told colleagues that the UK lawmakers will ultimately face a choice between the deal brokered by May or a long delay to Brexit. Well, the deal with the Brexit is actually broken from the mere beginning, because I don't understand why the UK would have to pay anything to the EU just because Britain decided to leave the EU. That's a complete rape of national sovereignty, because they don't owe anything to the EU. They were paying the most to the EU so far because they were a very rich country, and you are not forced to stay in the EU, so they're free to go. They shouldn't pay any single penny to the EU because they have nothing to pay. For what's it worth, the ITV News reporter who overheard the conversation, Angus Walker, says he didn't hear Robbins in full, nor did he claim Robbins was expressing anything other than his personal opinions. The UK government has made clear that even if the comments were accurately reported, Robbins was not speaking on his behalf, and it remains committed to the leaving EU on March 29. Nevertheless, the most significant part of Walker's report is Robbins' alleged views that the fear of extending the Article 50 process would focus the minds of Brexiteer-minded members of Parliament. Well, again, of course, I don't see the problem. Step back 24 hours and HuffPost UK's Paul Walker Walk published a detailed and impeccably sourced essay reporting that May was warming the idea of a no-deal Brexit. The logic is that if May concedes too much ground to the opposition Labour Party, as has been suggested of late night, it would tear her own Conservative Party apart. Well, of course it would tear the Conservative Party apart, because it would just show that they are not independent and they are not sovereign, which a ruling party should be, to be strong and actually responsible for the entire country. Here's where the Brexit endgame starts to become clear. Both the Robbins calculations and the no-deal scenario rely on a relatively strict calendar. British and EU negotiators' term meets before the end of February. May puts whatever comes of that to MPs on for a no vote on February 27th. May meets EU leader at a summit on March 21st, leading to an agreement just before the Brexit deadline of March 29th. The most important date here is March 21st. EU leaders will meet in Brussels and must take a decision whether to agree some new type of deal with the UK. Well, of course, again, the UK does not need to have any sort of a deal with the EU. They just leave it. They don't need to pay a single penny to them. which May would then have to take back to the House of Commons or refuse to reopen the deal. That would land everyone back to the square one, just 8 days before Brexit. Yet again, they should just not give them a single penny. Those 8 days are shaping up to be the most crucial in the entire Brexit process. Whatever happens on March 21st, providing Parliament doesn't mandate on February 27th that May asks for an extension to the Brexit process, things will get very crunchy in London. Well, I think the biggest thing that slows them down is the fact that they actually want to have an actual deal with the EU. They don't need to, they only need to leave the EU and forget about them. They don't need to pay a single penny, they don't need to have any sort of diplomatic relations with the EU. They don't want to be a part of the EU, so they should just leave. After this, Parliament will have to approve a deal, likely something that resembles May's current agreement with some minor tweaks, or, as per the terms of Article 50, face the reality of the default no-deal Brexit on March 29. Here we must come back to the overheard comments of the UK's chief negotiator. While many have interpreted Ollie Robbins' remarks as some kind of Downing Street plot to terrify Brexiter MPs into accepting May deals, it's just as likely that Robbins was stating a political reality. At the end of March, days away from the default no-deal exit, MPs would have to engage with the real world. Well, of course, we can see the bias that the CNN is trying to push about how it's stupid to leave the EU. Well, maybe it is, maybe it's not. Well, it's Britain, so they can still trade with any EU country, because I don't think any company from inside the EU would just want to lose ties to any company inside the UK. That's just too much money to lose. If a country like Poland wanted to leave the EU, they'll just go. Like, nobody would give two shits about them, seriously. I'm not joking. Like, Poland takes the most money in order to develop its own country and actually does not give any money to the EU. So that would even be a relief. Well, at least for the Western EU countries that are trying to push their centralized agenda of EU being more of a United States of Europe and countries being just an autonomous province instead of it being an economic union of countries that want to trade with each other. Plenty of sensible minds think that a majority MPs would at that point do all they could to avoid chaos and force May to request an extension to Article 50. Yeah, of course, because all we need is a delay to keep the UK in the EU. Well, that would be preferred by the left-wing media and left-wing politicians as well. Now that really would concentrate minds. Hate the idea of no deal? Vote for May's deal. Terrified of Brexit delayed? Vote for May deals. Call it the lesser of three political evils. And the real drama lies in the fact that it's not clear if this is all part of some grand Downing Street plot in an excellent Politico piece earlier this week on the inner workings of May's mind. Tom McTouch concluded, the woman who runs Britain in its gravest hour of crisis since 1945 remains almost uniquely unknown for a prime minister. McTouch hammers home the point that in the event that May's deal is scrubbed either by the EU or by the UK Parliament, it's not clear how she would react. Faced with the choice between embracing a no-deal Brexit or requesting a last-minute delay, no one knows which way the Prime Minister would jump in this scenario. Not her cabinet, her closest advisors, nor her lifelong friends in the parliament. In other words, for all who oppose May, the threat is real. Optimists in London believe that May could yet pull off the seemingly impossible and bring enough MPs on the side to get her deal approved. Although it should be noted that most of the optimism is confined to members to May's team and their supporters. Not everyone else is so confident. In Brussels, people close to the negotiators are increasingly worried that a small group of hardline MPs in London are starting to convince colleagues that a no-deal scenario would not be the disaster many are predicting. Well, of course, it would not be a disaster. They would just leave the EU without paying any single penny. The problem is, so few in Brussels trust anything that is said by Westminster politicians anymore. The risk of a disorderly Brexit is rising. It's impossible to tell if these people are just grandstanding or if they have started to believe that no deal is actually the best option. An EU source of the detailed knowledge of the negotiations explained. So as with all things Brexit, miscommunications and failure of one camp to understand the other stakes in the UK ever close to the knife edge. There are 5 weeks to go until March 21st summit. Expect plenty more eruptions before then, but remember, very little changes the decision that MPs will ultimately have to make at this point. Time has backed the UK into a corner. Well, here we can see how CNN is talking how no-deal Brexit would be an actual disaster that nobody wants. Well, heck no. No-deal Brexit would be actually the best outcome for the UK because they don't owe a single penny to the EU. If something, the EU is way more closer to owning money to the UK. The UK have been heavily investing in the EU, spending millions upon millions of money to improve the situation of lesser developed countries just like Bulgaria, Croatia, Slovenia, Poland in the EU. The UK have never gotten any of the money back, so I don't think that a deal with Brexit is needed. If something, the deal should be that EU is supposed to pay back the money to the UK. Well, that will be it for today. I hope you enjoyed and stay safe.